Hi everyone, this is Cloud Security Masterclass, and in this video, we'll be doing a lab walkthrough on AWS Users. If this is your first time on this channel, also take a look at the related article on AWS Users at cloudsecuritymasterclass.com. In AWS, a user as a form of an identity can be one of two things, root user or an IAM user. I've already created my root user account, which came as part of my AWS account setup, and I'll be using that to log in here and show you the console of AWS. I will also compare that console with the IAM user console to show you the differences between the two users. So once we log in to the root user, immediately a question comes to our mind. How do we know if this is the root user? So a quick way to check this out is that if you go to the right-hand side top link here, it shows you the name of the account, which is CloudSec Master Class Account 1. If I click on this, it will show you the account ID, but it won't show me any identity details of who the user is. And that's your queue. If I compare this screen with the screen of an IAM user, which I've already logged into for reference purposes, on your left-hand side of the screen, you can see the screen from IAM user. And there you see, if you click on this icon again, you see the IAM user here. You don't see that in the root user screen, and that's really the cue that tells you that this is the console for the root user, and the root user has logged into this account. So I'll go ahead and maximize this. Now, the second question that I ask is, how do we manage the credentials for root user, and where are those credentials available, right? Generally, when you're working with IAM, we have this habit of going to the IAM console. And from there, we usually go to the user screen and see the list of users. Now, we have two users here in this account, but none of these are the root user, right? So in general, to update the credentials for any of the IAM users, you will click on that user, go to security credentials, and update that. But how do you do that for the root user? In order to do that for the root user, you have to go back again to the top right link where the account name is mentioned and click on security credentials. Now this section of security credentials is specifically created for the root user. And you'll see options here with password, MFA, access keys, CloudFront keys, X509 certificate, account identifier, stuff like that. Also notice here that there is no way to update the permissions for root account. Due to the nature of this user being the single identity with which you start your AWS account, this user has complete access to all AWS services. And by design, there is no way to reduce those permissions that are applied to this user. So one way to log in with a root account is with the username and password, which we just witnessed. The other way to log in to or use the AWS APIs with the root account is via access keys. Let's look at that. So again, let's go to this top right-hand side link, click on security credentials, and let's click on access keys. So access keys are very similar to username and password, except that they have two components, access key ID, which is kind of like the username, and secret access key, which is kind of like the password. But these are auto-generated for you. You do not define these terms. So let's try to create one key for the root user. See here that one key is actually already created, and I'll create one more key. So create new access key, and I'm going to show you the key because I'm going to delete this anyways afterwards. But these are the two components of this key. I'm going to copy the access key ID, go back to my command line, click on AWS configure, which really is the configuration tool for AWS CLI. Once I click on it, it will ask me for the AWS access key ID, copy paste that, enter. It will then ask me for the secret access key ID. I'll click on that, copy, paste, enter, accept these two default values, and voila, I'm now logged in to the root user via the command line. So again, how do I know it's a root user? I will type in the simple command, AWS sts get caller identity. And this will tell me that the ARN of the user is root. And from here on, I can do any other command lines to get to wherever I want to. Say, for example, I can do AWS S3LS to list all the buckets in this account. And there's only one at this point, so it lists that. and etc. etc. So this is how you access the AWS root user via the command line. Now go back to the console, click on close. I'm gonna make this inactive, copy this active, deactivate this, and I'm gonna delete this as well. And I'm gonna also delete my previous one. Right, if I click refresh, the keys should be gone now, and I can go back to the console, double confirm this, and now it gives me an error. So yeah, the keys are not working now. The IAM user, I want to show you how you can update the default password policy that is available for your IAM account or your AWS account. So in order to do that, you'll still be working the IAM console. Let's go back to the IAM console and click on account settings here. And there's an icon right here which shows you, which allows you to change the password policy. Notice here that it tells you that the default password policy is the minimum password length is 8 characters. It includes a minimum of 3 of the following mix of characters: lowercase, uppercase, numbers, and special characters. And it must not be identical to your AWS account name or email address. So this is already set up by default, but for cases like compliance related where you want more strengthened password policy, you have an option of changing that. Click here, you can enforce minimum password length, and you can require uppercase, lowercase, special characters. You can prevent password reuse, allow users to change their own passwords, password expiration, requires administrator reset, and stuff like that. So this is one way of updating the default AWS policy to suit your custom organizational needs. So let's create our IAM user now. I'll click on the user section, click on add users, give the user name, and I select the type of permissions that I want to give. For now, I'm just going to give the console access, and then I'm going to add the programmatic access after creating the user. Now click custom password. And this password will abide by whatever password policy you have updated in your case. In my case, I am just using the default password policy, and I'm not going to reset the password. So I'm also not going to add in permissions. Just click vanilla user without any permissions at all. And these are the instructions that you can then send out to the user in order to help them log into the console. I already know these instructions, so I'm not going to follow anything at all. I'm just going to click on close. I know that my username is user3. What I'm also going to copy from here is the account ID, and you will see why. So when we logged in initially with the root user, you saw this screen, right? Now we're going to click on IAM user. And this is why I copied the account ID, because when I'm logging with the IAM user, it actually asks me the account ID to identify the account with which you are trying to log into. Why doesn't it ask the account ID when you log in with the root user? Because your root user email is tied into that account. It's a single identity that tied into that that is tied into that AWS account, and that's not the same with the IAM user. You can have multiple IAM users in a single AWS account. So it asks you for an account ID. I'm going to paste it. Go next. Username, user3, and password. Sign in. So once I'm signed in, this is how the console looks like. We have already seen this console. I'm not going to spend more time here. I'm going to switch back to my root user screen, and what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to create an access key access key for this user. So I'm going to click on the user section, click on user3, go to the security credentials page here, and create an access key. And this is exactly similar to how we did for the root user. I'm again going to show you the key because I'm going to delete this later. I'm going to copy the access key ID, go back to my terminal, do a AWS configure again, paste the access key ID, copy the secret access key, paste in there, accept the default region, accept the default format, and voila, I'm logged in with the user 3 now. Again, to confirm, I'm gonna do AWS STS get caller identity, and it's going to show me this time that I'm logged in with my user 3. And it shows user here in order to tell me that this is actually an IAM user, not the root user. Also notice here that we have not provided any permissions to this user. So any actions like AWS S3 LS would lead to permission denied. Finally, the one cool thing that I want to show you about AWS users is the credentials report. So having logged in to the root account, you're going to go back to the IAM section and click on credentials report. And this is a cool report because it gives you a list of all your account's users and status of the various credentials. So let's click on download report. And this is how it looks like right now. It gives you the username, the ARN, the creation time for the user, um, password enabled, password last used, password last changed, is MFA active, is any access key active, is the access key, when was the last rotated time for the access key, and stuff like that. All of these details are very important for any person trying to audit an AWS account. And the one thing that I want to point out here is that if you see the number of users here, it's just one user here, root account. But we clearly know, we go back to the console, that there are actually 3 more users here. So what's going on? So this report shows you all the IAM users created in this account, um, but it does not, some of the accounts, some of the users do not show up here because this report is generated once every 4 hours. Meaning, if you've already generated this report within the last 4 hours, it will show you the previous one. And I did that within the 4 hours when I only had the root account. So lesson here, be careful with how you read the support, or should I say when you read the support, because it might turn up stale data. So this is it for the lab walkthrough on AWS users. Keep watching out for next lessons and video labs on AWS security at cloudsecuritymasterclass.com.